plugin of the week is the Manny Marroquin ToneShaper. The Manny Marroquin ToneShaper is like a multi-band sidechain or parallel compression unit. And the basic way that it works is like as a tonal shaping characteristic. So if you've watched my mixing courses and you've gotten into this, I talk a lot about squash tracks and parallel compression and things along those lines. And that's what this signal chain is. And the idea is that by highlighting certain frequency areas, band limiting particular frequency areas, and compressing those particular frequency areas exclusively, you can create what I've called frequency density within those particular things, and that is tonal character. So when you listen to a guitar, a piano, it has a certain tonal sound, a tonal character, and part of that is the density that builds up within particular frequency areas naturally. This allows you to enhance those tonal areas in a way that an EQ can't, because an EQ supplies just static gain control. And so the dynamic of that particular frequency area doesn't shift. But when you compress a particular frequency area, you make the same amount of frequencies more dense by making the dynamic within that frequency band less dynamic. And by compressing it and making it more dense, it becomes more solid and then has a bit of a tonal shaping characteristic. So the way the plugin works is essentially you have a direct signal, and this actually goes, well, starting from the beginning, you have an input and an output control. So that's just your input level, output level. And then you have the direct signal, which you can turn off. So you can run this in parallel like a send and use this as just a parallel compression kind of thing without the direct signal. But if you place it on the insert, you can leave the direct signal in and you can mix this plus minus. So it starts at 0 and you can go negative or positive. And then you have 5 sliders, low, low, mid, high, or I'm sorry, 4. And then you have 4 frequency selectors, which give you different frequencies that it focuses those tonal compression characteristics in, and a width control. Now the width control works only on the low mid, and high band and leaves the high band, the low band alone. So let's say that we wanted to work with a drum sound. So I have this on a stem of just drums. So we have some. So if I wanted to enhance low end, so now you hear the sub frequency. Now if I click here, so I get a real nice sub kind of thing in here. And now if I want to bring in maybe like a little bit of brightness on the top here, bring in a nice air. That really gets a lot of snap out of the high end. And then and maybe I can kind of find like the low frequency on the so like that number 2 on the snare seems to work really nice. Of course, now this is additive, so you're going to get a lot more stuff going on here when this is added in, because the cumulative effect of this with all the other stuff, it's adding on, so the total gain is going to be higher going out, right? And so this is where we can but you really hear that sonic density, and it's really, really well done. You know, like sonically, it just sounds really great. So this is what's being added in, and it doesn't sound much on its own, but when it's added in to the direct. Now what I can also do is I can put in some width on the 3 top bands here. And what this does is it spreads the it spreads those high bands, sort of like a like an S1 type of thing, where it's like a width control, where you're widening the stereo field just a bit, but just in the higher frequencies. And that's typical because it's very hard to hear a spreading on the lower frequencies. Its lower frequencies are much harder to define it from a singular location. So if you have a subwoofer in a room, to point out its location is much more difficult if it's playing like frequencies like 40 hertz and below. It's very difficult to find the actual location of the sub, which is why the sub doesn't have to be like identically right between the speakers or anything. It could be, up against the wall. It can be in the corner of the room, and you still feel the energy from it. And so there's no reason to spread that. It doesn't serve like a positive effect in terms of the mix. So that's what this is all about. And it's a subtle thing. It's not a hugely dramatic kind of thing. So it's not like a total phasing thing. And it's only a width control. So if I make it wide here, and that just kind of adds like a little bit of openness to the sound. But really, really cool processor, really warm, got like a nice kind of analog vibe to it, and really, really powerful thing. Like all engineers have their variations of this, and while to multi-band it is a little bit more difficult in the analog realm, what engineers will do is they will take an EQ prior to the compression, and they will cut out frequencies that they don't want to be tonally enhanced or made dense. They will add the frequency areas where they do want that tonal enhancement. They will take away or gut away the frequencies that they don't, and then apply the compression, and then the compression kind of kicks in and works and does this. So in my mixing courses, you see a lot of the squash tracks. I always typically put like an equalization before that. So I'm really shaping the sound, sometimes really dramatically, for the frequency areas that I want enhanced. This does it on a band-by-band basis, so it's a little bit more separate, as opposed to just going into like a standard stereo compressor or mono compressor, that filtering. This is actually isolating the individual bands, which gives you a bit more tonal control. So this is a sort of a digital thing that is a little bit more difficult to do in the analog realm, or to do separately with the processing. But a very, very cool plugin, part of the Manny Marroquin signature series, by Waves, right? There it is, the Manny Marroquin ToneShaper.